Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Works meeting for May 1st, 2023. I'm Councilmember Brenda Fincher, Chair of the committee, and I have with me Councilmember Marley Larimer and Chair of the department, Director of the department, Chad Barron. So we have 5 items on our agenda today. Are there any changes to the order?
No changes.
No changes to the order or anything on the agenda? Then we are ready for a motion.
Chair, I move to approve the minutes dated March 20th, 2023.
Second. It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor? Aye.
Actually, I think I had the minutes date wrong.
Actually, April 3rd.
Yeah. Do I need to remove?
Yes.
Chair, I move to approve minutes from the April 3rd meeting.
It has been moved. Second. It has been moved and seconded. Throws me off when there's only 2 of us here.
Yeah.
So it has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for April 3rd, 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes for April 3rd have been approved as written. Okay, we are going to have our director, in the place of Mike Mactutis, report to us on the King County Flood Control District Lower Green River Corridor Plan.
Thank you. Yeah, Mike couldn't be here today, so I'll cover this item, and anything I miss, he can pick up at our next meeting. But the importance of the Lower Green River Corridor Flood Hazard Management Plan has been, I think, presented a number of times to the committee over the years. This is moving forward the best way to deal with our levees. And we have 12 miles of levees that we've been working on the right bank, or the generally east side of the river, gosh, for about 14 years now in earnest. And we have some additional work we need to do on the west side. In that time, as we've been working with the King County Flood Control District, they've also been looking at a master plan of sorts for the levee system itself. So if you go to the next slide, Karen, thank you. The district, as we've described in the past, is a countywide special purpose district for taking care of flood protection throughout the county. And they're tasked with looking at all of the river systems, but particular us here in Kent. The Green Duwamish system is the one that we're most concerned with. And so this flood hazard management plan for the Lower Green River is a very important document to the city. Next slide, please. We've had a number of issues over the decades with flooding in the Green River Valley. It's one of the reasons it was such a good farming area. There have been natural recurrences of flooding throughout, beyond our history here, and all the way into the middle part of the 20th century before the Howard Hansen Dam was constructed. Levees were also constructed prior to the dam to try and keep the water channelized in the early parts of the 20th century. But once it became apparent that that wasn't going to do the trick, Congress authorized construction of the dam in 1950-something that Mike would definitely remember the exact day of, but I know that it was finished off in the early 60s and has been protecting the valley ever since. Next slide, please. So back in 2016, the Flood District Board of Supervisors, which is comprised of members of the King County Council, directed the preparation of a work plan for the river, for the Green River. The process started back in April of 2018. They've had quite a list of stakeholders involved, and they've gone through a scoping process. So what that all led up to was the development and now publication of a draft environmental impact statement that presents the flood hazard management plan for the Lower Green. And again, the big issue here is we're trying to marry up the focuses of Green River flood protection, habitat, because we have it's a salmon-bearing river with endangered species in it. So we have a major habitat component, And then also the fact that we're here, people. So a recreation and then tie-in with the river itself, and trying to marry all of those interests together is one of the main focuses of the plan. So again, the draft environmental impact statement was issued on the 20th of March, and we're right now in the scoping or the comment period. So we'll be going through that. The scoping period was obviously before they did the EIS. The comment period is active, and we're going through the document right now and putting together at a staff level comments from the city on the approach. Next slide. So there are three alternatives, and it's how we look at the multi-benefit projects throughout the Lower Green. So alternative one is a project-by-project or multi-benefit implementation. This is where and this is also called the no-action alternative because there's already a list of projects that we're working on Lower Green to try and address the existing levee condition, provide that, again, the flood hazard management or the flood abatement benefit along with habitat and recreation. Alternative two, systematic multi-benefit implementation. This is looking at another an approach where we look throughout the entire system as opposed to going project by project. And again, alternative one, where we look at each individual levee reach and we say, okay, it doesn't meet a good levee standard, so we're going to have to work on each of these levees individually. By looking at alternative two, we say, hey, here's the river as a whole. How are we going to approach how we I shouldn't say patch holes, but how we improve the levees throughout the river system. And then alternative three is how do we take that same river corridor approach, that river-wide approach, and then we add, are there multi-benefits or additional benefits that we could add on or enhance the projects even further so that we improve habitat further, improve flood risk reduction even further, and even our recreation, our approach to the river. So again, as an example of that, if we go to the next slide. In our alternative one, project by project implementation, this is similar to the way we've been approaching it by going through, if you may remember in the past, we've done work on the Briscoe-Desimone levee, where we're working on the lower Russell Road levee currently. Upper Russell Road, south and north reaches are reaches that we've completed in the past, where we went through and we got improvements permitted individually through the Corps of Engineers and the resource agencies, and we completed those improvements. So they had mitigation measures that were tied into the specific projects themselves. Next slide. If we go with an alternative two approach, sorry, can you go back one slide, Karen? You notice at the planning level cost estimate, this approach, and this is kind of a rough approach for a project similar to what we would have done in the past, and I'll just round up, $10 to $20 million we would spend on this type of project. Looking at alternative two, how does this fit into the whole corridor, and how can we make some systemic changes? Next slide. That's just slightly higher cost. However, we're looking at how that ties in river-wide, and that's a goal of making sure that we're prioritizing correctly how the improvements are made. And then alternative three, this is a wider area where we've taken a look at some of the impacts of prior development or what the current project how it might impact habitat, and we would take a wider view of how we can make improvements. So that's where you see the planning level cost estimate went from 10 to 20 million, closer to 15 to 30 million, because as shown, this is assuming we could make potential buyouts of property to widen the river channel, or we could take a slightly different approach on habitat near the water, add in water work, or any number of things where we improve habitat. Next slide actually shows a kind of the difference between the two approaches. The picture on the top is Briscoe-Desimone, where we went in and in portions we put in a flood wall, and then we did habitat improvements on the bank itself. That way we get the flood protection from the flood wall, and then actually on the river side we also included widened trails. So we had trail improvements for folks who want to use areas along the river, and then we had riverbank plantings in order to mitigate the impacts of having the flood protection installed. A more holistic approach, excuse me, a more holistic approach would be something more like Lower Russell Road, or in this picture, it's the Downey project, where we're getting flood hazard risk reduction along with significant habitat improvements, and then we have a recreational component as well with the trail that goes along Frager Road. So it's in this case, we didn't have, or we had an old nursery nearby, near Downey, that we purchased and took out. In the picture that was showing alternative 3, that was actually showing potential for either homes and or businesses, and so that's just a wider approach. Van Doren's Park and the Lower Russell Road levee would be another example of where we went kind of the extra mile on providing additional habitat. In that case, the Green River Natural Resources area was the contributing area for improving habitat. We were able to go further into the Green River Natural Resources area and provide a lot more habitat along the riverbank. Next slide. They've gone out with a far-reaching equity-based approach to trying to make sure they got all affected populations, translated the document into 8 languages. A number of our 2 virtual public meetings. They had postcards to much of the south end, a website, social media campaign, and I know in talking with the folks who are in charge of the district, they've tried very hard to make sure that they had outreach far and wide with regard to the draft EIS. Next slide. Again, we're in the comment period. It's been originally, I believe it was into April or early May timeframe. We asked for an extension, and they've moved that out to June 19th. So if people watching have comments and want to go check out the document, there is the address on the website for the document itself, and they are taking comments. Those can come from anybody. We are providing or putting together a list of comments that would come from the city, but anybody can review the document and comment on it. Next steps. Again, public comment accepted until 19th of June. The final, they call it a programmatic EIS, issued mid next year. So this is quite the process where they'll go through the comments and try and address the comments. And then after that, they can have the final EIS completed and start putting together the direction of the board for completing the flood hazard management plan. And again, this is a far-ranging plan. We're looking at about a 30 to 50-year horizon they're trying to plan for. And when you look at the cost of the project and the scopes of the projects that are required to get to the level of protection we want and the habitat that we need, along with the recreation that everybody desires, it's a very comprehensive plan and approach. And with that, are there any questions?
Yeah, so on the options 2 and 3, are there additional grant, or is there more grant opportunities for the more integrated, holistic approaches?
We may be able to get grants. We've done it in the past. I know there were some grant dollars that were included in the Lower Russell Road project, but mostly we're dealing with flood district funds that help pay for the projects. But so for instance, and I think Rowena has talked about this at prior meetings, where we're trying to grant money for what we call Habitat Area A at the Lower Russell Road levee. So the levee's been replaced. There was mitigation related to the levee improvements, habitat improvements that were put in as mitigation for the flood risk reduction, along with the new park and the trail that go through there. But we also reserved an area to the north of that project, Habitat Area A, we're calling it, which we're going to try and get that funded through grants, similar to how we completed the Downey project. So they are available. It's just it's not quite as available as flood district dollars are to try and take care of the flood risk reduction. But again, the flood district is, as its name implies, a flood district, not a habitat district. But they do have to include habitat with the project in order to get those completed.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point, I know that we still have a lot of river that we have to work on. We still have a lot left in some years of work. But are there any measurements that we can use to see that the water is X degree cooler or in the river, or that we're getting more salmon through than before, or more this babies are living to make it up. Are there any measurements available that we could see that would show how we're doing so far with the improvements?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know Mike would be able to answer right away. What I do know is there are agencies, they keep fish counts. Probably the biggest single thing that's happening right now that's very exciting is the authorization for additional money for fish passage at Howard Hansen Dam that Mike talked about, I think, several meetings back, where this is we're pushing $1 billion project to include fish passage at Howard Hansen that'll allow salmon returning to spawn. They can get up above the dam and spawn above the dam, which is significantly increases the amount of habitat available to them to do that. So, yes, they're counting fish. Yes, they're observing in our lower green projects like Downey, like Lower Russell Road, trying to make observations of Riverview Park, the Lieber improvements that we've completed over the last 15 years. They will take counts to try and see, are we getting additional fish that are making their way back because of the things we're trying to do, making our best attempts at making the environment as friendly as we possibly can for their return. In addition, they keep tabs on the temperature because that's one of the big items that's probably the most, if we could reduce the risk the most, it'd be keeping the river temperatures down. And that's one of our biggest issues when you also consider global warming. The river temperatures are a big issue for us. So we are not keeping track of tabs on those things, but the agencies are. And we work with them to try and make sure we're addressing each of those individual issues.
I'd be interested in knowing, especially because the trees, I realize to shade the river, the trees and things that we've been planting have to be able to grow up some size, but to see if there's any difference that we can note yet.
Yeah, and there are projects that went in the 90s and 2000s where the trees are really starting to come up and provide the type of shade we've talked about in the past. So I know that there are areas where we've seen improvement, but we've had a long way to go too. Walking
down along the golf course, down by the green, that portion where you're right by the golf course and the bridge, you used to be able to just look down at the water there, and now all of that foliage, all of the trees have grown up so that you can't see water from some places at all. So, yeah, and it's nice. We're trying to preserve some of those view corridors when we're working with the Parks Department and trying to make sure that you can still have that interaction with the river by getting view corridors, but at the same time trying to provide that shade because the shade is a good thing for the river temperatures. Right. Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much. Then it is time to move on to Rowena, Valencia-Gica, and you're going to talk to us about the Department of Ecology Spill Coastal Protection Fund grant application.
This meeting today. I'm Rowena Valencia-Gica. I'm Environmental Supervisor at Public Works Engineering, and with me here today, Kyra, come closer. This is Kyra Kaiser. She is an environmental specialist also at Public Works Engineering. So recently we found out about this grant opportunity that we thought would be valuable for us to augment our fund that are being used for some of the work that we have been doing for the Maxoli wetlands. And this fund is, as you mentioned already, Spills Coastal Coastal Protection Fund being offered by the Department of Ecology. So I will give Kyra the floor so she can talk more about the grant application that we are doing, and this is due on the 4th of May, so this is kind of a rush application that we're doing. Kyra, please go ahead.
Okay. Hi. So as Rowena mentioned, we're applying for the Department of Ecology's Spills Coastal Protection Fund grant. And the grant is funded by money from oil spill penalties and natural resource damage assessments. Priority is given to projects at sites where oil spills have occurred, but also funded are water quality issues and fish and wildlife habitat protection and enhancement projects. So the McSorley Wetlands Cleanup qualifies for the grant. Next slide, please. The McSorley Wetlands is located in the southwest corner of Kent. On the east is I-5 and bordered by, on the west, the Pacific Highway. The McSorley Creek is the headwaters at the McSorley Wetlands, and then it runs into Des Moines, and the final reach is in Saltwater State Park, and lastly into the Puget Sound. Next slide. Many projects are going on in this area. So the McSorley Wetlands Cleanup Project supports the success of all projects downstream. So we have the City of Des Moines working on a culvert replacement project. We have the Washington Department of Transportation and the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife improving the fish passage at the State Route 99. And we have King County working in Saltwater State Park on improving the shoreline and estuary habitat. Next slide. The McSorley Wetlands is 79 acres of forested wetland. Mature forested wetlands are pretty rare in this area and provide ecologically significant functions such as water filtration and floodwater storage that should be preserved. The habitat, which includes a diversity of plant species, is valuable to wildlife. Chinook and coho have been documented in McSorley Creek, and 147 bird species have been recorded in the McSorley Creek Basin. Next slide. Many parcels in the McSorley wetlands have been used for encampments and dumping. In an effort to restore the site, the city cleaned up city-owned parcels in October 2022. The cleanup cost was about $113,000 for almost 90,000 pounds of trash. The City of Kent's operations crew continues to remove a couple hundred pounds of garbage every week due to re-encampment and repeated dumping. If awarded, the grant would provide between $10,000 and $50,000 for site cleanup costs. No match is required. The city currently has a contract underway with an on-call junk hauler to clean up various sites around the city, including the McSorley Wetlands. Next slide. McSorley Wetlands is surrounded by apartments, businesses, and homes. The closest school, Woodmont K-8 school, is within a quarter mile of the wetland. Living next to all this trash is not good for the community's well-being, including the safety and mental health of the community. The trash leaches pollutants including oils, plastics, bacteria and hazardous materials into the soil and water, resulting in environmental degradation. The trash also harms wildlife and kills vegetation. Cleanup of the McSorley wetlands would result in multiple environmental benefits and benefits to the community. If approved, the grant will supplement City of Kent's drainage funds and other grant funds allocated for site cleanup. Any questions?
No questions.
Does the McSorley extend to the other side of I-5 too, up there by 260th?
Yes.
Okay.
Between 260th and 272nd, there's a large wetland there bordered by Pacific Highway, I-5, 260th, and 272nd.
Okay, so it's only on one side of I-5. It's on the west side of I-5,
Yes.
not the east side. Okay, thank you. No other questions for either of us? Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Now, Tony Donati, Planet Protectors Summit.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for having me today. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about our recent Plant Protector Summit. My name is Tony Donati. I'm the Conservation Coordinator here in the Public Works Department. So the Plant Protector Summit is a long-standing environmental educational program which provides hands-on learning opportunities for local 3rd and 4th grade students to learn the importance of water and resource conservation. The summit, formerly known as the Water Festival, started in the year 2000 and now is held annually at Green River College. And since that time it started, it has seen well over 30,000 students during that time. Back in back in March, the city held its first Plant Protector Summit in person since the year 2019. Back in 2020, the summit was canceled just a week prior to us putting it on due to the pandemic. In 2021 and 2022, we had to switch courses and adapt because large gatherings were still compromised. And so we created 2 online videos, one of which, Councilmember Fincher there, you participated in. Those videos went out to the local city students and teachers to view while they were doing online learning. So that was really fun opportunity there. Like I mentioned, this was our first in-person event since 2019, and it was a really huge success. Over 500 Kent School District students, teachers, and parent chaperones participated in the presentations from our incredible partners, such as the Sioux Creek Water and Sewer District, the Reptile Man, Stephen Sewell, an environmental magician, the King County Solid Waste Division, Republic Services, Puget Sound Keeper Alliance, the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as our own dedicated in-house staffers from Public Works and the Parks Department. Students learned hands-on about stormwater pollution, the water cycle, microplastics, recycling, salmon and other animals, and they even got opportunities to plant trees and much more. Finally, we never really know how our work is going to affect others in their daily lives. Because of the pandemic, this year's Plant Protector Summit was one of the first times most of the participating students had ever been on a field trip, let alone seen or experienced a college campus, which we know creates online or lifelong learning opportunities. I often receive, after each of these, I often receive a lot of really good feedback and, from the teachers that really enjoyed coming. But this year we received one that was extra touching and heartfelt. It described a student whose day-to-day life and their background isn't one that necessarily is the typical student of an elementary, of someone in elementary school. We might think a typical childhood is, going to McDonald's, watching movies, playing at the beach. This teacher described many hardships for this student, and for everyone who read the email, there were a lot of tears. But the day of the Plant Protector Summit was one of many firsts for this student. And the teacher described, said that the student had to have hugged her probably 100 times throughout the morning and just saying, "Thank you so much for bringing us on this field trip." Typically students, stay with their teachers and chaperones, but this student just was so just genuinely excited and they had so much energy that the teachers just let them explore freely and just because they love seeing the joy and excitement on their face. This student actually had the opportunity to plant a tree And the Parks Department led that, in which we're really grateful that they participated. And part of that was they had to name their tree. And when they got back to the school, the teacher asked everyone, "Oh, okay, what do you all name your tree? What do you name your trees?" To which this student replied, "The best day ever."
Aww.
So it's a lot of work to manage the Plant Protector Summit. The city pays for bus transportation for the schools participating. We recruit the schools, recruit the presenters, create the grid that aligns who's going to be where. We rent the college. It's a lot of work, and that's in addition to everything else going on during the first quarter. But this story really motivates me and excites me to get ready for next year and put this on again for a new set of 3rd and 4th graders to participate, because, you know, again, we never know the type of work that we do, how it affects others. So it's really motivating. So with that, I'll take any questions.
No questions. I'm just still observing this story because that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, great job.
Are there other districts around that do something similar or join you into the one over at Green River? Or students who come, is it just Kent students?
We send the invite out to local students from the city of Kent, typically who are within our Kent Water, who are Kent Water customers. We extended it out to customers and schools in the Sioux Creek Water and Sewer District area, because the Sioux Creek Water and Sewer District, they sponsored those students to attend.
Okay.
So they paid for those students to come, and so that's typically what we do. No other cities team with us or anything, but this is our program that we put on, yeah.
So it's such good information that you guys have there. So glad that our students at least get to go see it.
Yeah.
Okay, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
That, I guess, just go off the cuff, I guess, real quick. But this Saturday is our Team Up to Clean Up from 9 to noon, Saturday, May 6th. So we're getting real good early enrollment, so people can come and register to participate in litter cleanup or graffiti removal. So you just go to the kentwa.gov/talkingtrash and click Team Up to Clean Up and register. And you can register yourself or your team to remove litter or remove graffiti. That's coming up this Saturday. So hope everyone can participate there. You go to the website and it tells you where you could check in, get some equipment. The city provides the graffiti removal kits, litter cleanup supplies, and send you on your way to clean up the community.
So really make it pretty easy to go out and help beautify the community, along with the ecological benefits that come along with that. So the city provides the litter picker-uppers, the gloves, the vest, everything, and people could do their own street and neighborhood, or they can join one of the larger ones like downtown, but there's going to be a meeting place on East Hill, one on West Hill, and one in the Valley.
Yep.
So it's really convenient, and it's fun.
Lots of fun, yes.
So thank you very much.
All right, thanks for your time today. Thanks.
Now we have David Paine coming up to talk about this 2023 to 2029 6-year transportation improvement program.
Oh, it's hard to follow up that act.
Right.
Tony, always making it hard for me. No. Good evening, council members. David Paine, City Transportation Planner, here continuing the conversation about the 2024 to 2029 Transportation Improvement Program. Last we were presenting on March 21st or 20th before the Public Works Committee, and before that, January 17th, before the entire council's at a work session. Tonight, I'll be presenting highlights of the 2024 to 2029 TIP. The short agenda we'll be revisiting the schedule for the overall update that we undergo every year, starting in January. And then I'll be summarizing the outreach and involvement to date that we have encountered. And then also I'll be going through the detailed projects, providing a highlight of some of the ins and the outs for this year's Transportation Improvement Program update. A refresher for the calendar for the update. In January, we started with briefings and project nominations between partners and the council and the workshop. In February, we moved to draft some of the update material and recommendations, which we then took out first to this committee in March, and then out to the public in March for public involvement and feedback. And then here we are just one day after April, May 1st, with our draft document, which is in the backup for the committee, back before Public Works Committee, with the revisions based on the input that we received. And then in May, on the 16th, we are scheduled to hold a public hearing before the full council, and hopefully adoption either that day or shortly after. As a summary of the outreach and involvement that we undertook this year, each year we try to do something a little bit more than the year before. I do want to clarify, since the last presentation, this is the Transportation Improvement Program as a 6-year program is not the same as the Transportation Master Plan. The Transportation Master Plan is a 20-year plan. We had full project funding for, we had a consultant on board that was a multi-year, included a Transportation Advisory Committee and translation into multiple languages. This update has services available, translation services available upon request for the materials that we have outreach, but that doesn't mean that we do not do robust outreach. All of the items in bold on the left are public events, public held events such as this one, where folks are invited to come and testify or comment on the items. But just the same, the illustration does start in the upper left-hand corner with the Transportation Master Plan. So the projects that we're moving into the TIP window, by and large, all went through that public involvement process and through the equity lens for prioritization of projects to be included in the fiscally constrained TMP. In addition, we have projects that were vetted and proposed through the Local Road Safety Plan, on the right side of the plus symbol, as well as projects that are brought to us through our partners in an ongoing coordination with some of the partners that we locate, that we're identifying in the lower right-hand side of the illustration: Kent School District, Puget Sound Regional Fire, the interdepartmental work group that is always ever present in our ongoing conversations, as well as the King County Metro. Having said that, the good news on the perhaps more robust and involved outreach is that this summer we'll be working on Safe Streets and Roads for All program, which I'll be talking about as one of the slides, which we are planning to receive funds from from FHWA via the Puget Sound Regional Council. That's the paperwork is in the mail, as they say, and we hope to be able to bring that back to council for acceptance. And we are putting out a request for qualifications, or we will be putting out a request for qualifications for consultants to help support with some of that similar larger lift, if you will, on public involvement. And lastly, I will be going over, when the slide comes up, some of the changes, and I'll highlight those of what's different between the March 20th presentation and today. So the first illustration is our projects that are proposed to be removed from the TIP as complete. We have two projects on both the South 212th Street Preservation Project in the upper left, and then the 76th Avenue North segment. Both of those projects are or should be wrapping up as complete by the time that the project, by the time the TIP is adopted in approximately a month from now. Not mapped is the conclusion of the 2021 Transportation Master Plan. So we're going ahead and we're requesting that be removed from the TIP. And each of the preservation projects included full-width pavement overlay. And we also have the reference in the upper right-hand corner, again, to the QR code, which is the story map viewer that we're using, that we've continued to use both last year and this year for proposed changes to the tip, and ongoing as folks want to tap in and see what's going on in the city of Kent during the year. That's still an active link, and it's updated as we update the tip. A summary of the projects. This is the map that we previewed last month. This is also a map that's present currently at Kent Commons. We've got a paper a poster board display, including the QR code for ways that folks can get their comments into us. This summarizes the projects by category, but I will go through each of the projects individually, sort of a high-level summary for each of those now in a little bit more detail than what we had in March. So the first are our two preservation projects. So we're adding these in the outside window of the tip in 2026 and 2028 to allow us to go for grant applications through PSRC that are coming up next year. So the first is South 196th Street preservation, shown there on the left. The current condition of the roadway, we are planning to do a little bit of operational improvements to that this year. But the preservation project would allow us to go for a much larger stretch of roadway, and therefore we need to program it in a couple of years ahead of time in order to allow us to go after the grant funding. These would include replacing failing sections of road and the full-width pavement overlays. And then a little bit farther out, again, 2028, for South 228th Street preservation. That would be for a section just to the west of East Valley Highway, up over to the Green River Bridge. Moving on to the safety category, we previewed on the 20th. The first project is the Willis Street Road Diet and RRFB enhanced crossing at 2nd Avenue. So this is a project that we were nominated by for the inclusion in last year's local road safety plan. We were nominated by the State Department of Transportation and PSRC as part of an inaugural program by the state for Connecting Communities pilot program, which has, as of last week, been funded by the legislature. And so we believe that we will be coming back to council within a couple of weeks, if not shortly, months to have an acceptance award for this project. So we're happy again to be one of the 5 cities in the state to be in that first year of program funding. And you can see an illustration of what the improvements would look like at 2nd Avenue on West Willis Street in the lower left-hand corner. Also listed but not shown, not mapped, is every other year we update our local road safety plan. So this would be a continuance of that program this coming year. But I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, we're adding to this iteration of the local road safety plan a Safe Streets and Roads for All action plan. That's going to enable us to convert the city's local road safety plan into a qualifying action plan for the federal government to allow us to unlock some pretty significant, we hope, application for funds from a new program under the bipartisan infrastructure law. And that also is a grant-funded action plan. We're one of 5 cities in the region to have been funded for that, and we have not yet accepted the funds for it. The paperwork is also in the mail between the feds and PSRC, but we hope to bring that back to this body within a month or two as soon as we get the green light from PSRC. Moving into...
David,
yes?
can you hold on one second? I just want to back up. I know that we talked to the committee about this back before we applied, and I think we've talked a little bit about it in previous meetings, but just for the viewing public at home, just to highlight it a little bit, David and folks in transportation had come and asked about applying for a Safe Streets for All federal grant to do this enhanced local road safety plan, which would also make us more eligible, we'll say, for federal grants on larger safety program or projects throughout the city. We were going to put in an application as the City of Kent, and in working with our regional partners, PSRC thought it might be better if we went in together and applied it for a larger program with a number of other cities. So we took their lead, and we were successful in getting money as part of that bigger coalition, which is really nice because it's PSRC as an entity, and then 5 cities or four cities
plus Pierce County.
Okay, Pierce County, 4 cities, and then PSRC as a group. So we will be one of those cities that has a more robust local road safety plan coming out of the exercise, and then again we'll be able to apply for more federal safety funds in future years. So very excited about that. And we've had a number of requests for projects that enhance traffic safety throughout the city, and this is one of the ways that we get that done. So thanks for that interruption.
Thank you, Chad. We're hoping to also bring a briefing to Public Works Committee and or the full council's work session sometime later in the summer. So stay tuned for that from Eric Preston. Just looking for space on the calendars. Moving to the category of multimodal connections, there are 3 projects shown on the slide. I'm going to read from my notes to make sure I get the details right. The first is a Reith Road shared use path. We're currently in design and about to go to letting on improvements to Reith Road north of 253rd Street. This would be the next segment up the roadway between 253rd Street to Fenwick Park. However, whereas the prior section is a road diet with a compact roundabout, this would be a newly designed project for a shared use path, we think on the west side of the roadway to connect between those 2 locations. The second project shown in the illustration in the middle, this is the intersection. The image is the intersection of the interurban trail and James Street. As you can see, where there are bike lanes to the east of the interurban, and then they kind of peter out at they conclude at the interurban trail. So this would be a study to potentially support a road diet west of that point. So we've included some of that notice as well as to do some traffic modeling to evaluate that, to assess that. And then the third project is from the Transportation Master Plan to improve multimodal connections between earthworks parks and downtown. And so the illustration is a map of the level of transportation stress mapping in the adopted Transportation Master Plan. So we would be potentially looking for a project to carry that concept forward next year in grant rounds. These 2 projects were added after we went to the public in March 20th. The first is the interurban trail crossings. This was in last year's TIP. However, the Washington legislature concluded last week, included a project for funding 4 of the locations for crossings of the interurban trail from the top to the bottom, south to 12th Street, West James Street, Smith Street, and South 259th Street. So these would be primarily signalization improvements, although they may include some striping and some signage improvements. And we're very excited about this project and happy to move it up into the reasonably expected category of projects from the seeking funding category. And then also we've added 132nd Avenue Southeast for two crossing enhancements between, notes please, between Southeast 214th Way and Sunrise Elementary School, or roughly Southeast 244th Street. Three other projects in our Sidewalk and Safe Routes to Schools programs. The first on the top left image, you can see Sortun Elementary School. This would be on a walking path, an all-weather walking path on South 248th Street, west approximately west of this sign out to 14th Avenue, to 124th Avenue, correction, southeast, to Sorrentine Elementary School. And then second on the list, we have a shared use path that's going to be implemented on Southeast 259th as part of the Milwaukee 2 Levy project, Levy project. And you can see the design, at least this is the preliminary concept to add the levee and redirect Southeast 259th along the levee construction, and then as on top of the levee would be the construction of the shared use path shown there in dark blue. And then the last on the list here for this slide is improvements to 64th Avenue South and South 236th Street in intersection improvements. That's the intersection shown in the lower left-hand corner. We applied for safe routes to schools for improvements to the intersection last year and received some helpful feedback, some constructive feedback from the grantor agency that our application could be perhaps a little bit more competitive if we could include a concept for a compact roundabout at that intersection. So we're going to make those revisions and revise and resubmit for the next grant process. And the last slide for the presentation today highlights 3 capacity projects. So the first is an extension of 32nd Avenue on the West Hill, and that is between 236th, the terminus of 236th at the east end of 236th, which is under construction. I believe they're pouring the concrete for that this week as part of the Link Light Rail extension site improvements. A roundabout at the end of 236th, down to 240th Street. So that would be constructing a new street with sidewalk on both sides. The second listed project is adaptive signals. That would be to implement an adaptive signal and transit signal priority in the city core, affecting approximately the Purple Cheerio intersections from the map. This would provide a traffic signal system that dynamically adapts to the conditions. And it's also an offshoot of a feasibility study just completed by King County Metro for Route 165, wherein they identified some improvements to the route, which includes some of the sections through downtown Kent where they experience a number of delays. So this would really improve mobility and reduce delays for all modes through downtown Kent once implemented. And last on the list is highlighting the State Route 509 Gateway Partnership. This is part of a $2.6 billion project that's been going on for quite some time. In 2018, local cities were approached as part of the partnership with the Washington State Department of Transportation to help fund. The illustration in the lower left-hand corner shows the funding pie, if you will, $130 million of local funding to leverage with the state, federal, and toll-identified funds to make the project a go. So local cities, including Kent, stepped up to help fund local parts of to fund local match as part of that project. At this point, all funds are committed for the local match, and the project is phase 1B, which is the Kent-Des Moines interchange, are now are under construction. The City Council in 2018 agreed to a memorandum of understanding to participate in that, and the phasing for those local payments are coming up on the horizon. So in 2025, we believe that that first phase with Veterans Drive Extended will be complete, and that would be the point that Kent would be on the hook for our contribution to the overall project, and so that's listed in the tip. And we've also split out from that one overall project, we've split out a separate line because the timing of the participation by Kent will also include a payment for an auxiliary lane, which is shown just in the bottom left-hand corner there, the purple of the illustration. That's phase 2 of the SR 509 Gateway Partnership phase completion, which was just recently also fully funded by the state legislature. So those are two lines that date back to a memorandum of understanding that council approved in 2018. So with that, then the next steps for the transportation improvement program would be a public hearing on the 16th in these chambers. And the draft document is posted as the backup to this item. The viewer is still active. We still have our channels are open. And with that, what other questions can I answer for the council members?
Any questions, council member?
None from me.
Can you remind me so phase 2, what span of 509 does that cover? How far does that take us?
Phase 2 includes a couple of segments, but the segment that Kent's local participation is tied to is an auxiliary lane between the Kent-Des Moines interchange and 272nd. So it'll be an auxiliary lane, a southbound auxiliary lane.
Okay.
Construction of a new lane.
Thank you very much. No other questions?
No, not from me.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
So much. See y'all in a couple weeks.
Yep.
Then I believe that is it for us. Director, do you happen to know just off the top of your head before we adjourn, people can mark their calendars early, the date for Public Works Day?
Public Works Week, I believe, is the week of May 22nd.
And the day that you guys set up over at Showware?
And yeah, this year I talked more about that with our operations crew. We are not having a program at Showware this year, but we will have the proclamation at the council meeting would be the 16th, May 16th.
Okay. With that,
How about a short, quick plug for the Kent Bicycle Advisory Board's rodeo on May 20th to kick off Public Works Week. So that will be at the Morrill Meadows Park on the 20th between 10 and 1 p.m. So it'll include a bike course for the littles, safety instructions, helmets fitting. So we want to definitely extend a warm welcome to everybody in the neighboring area to come out and participate for that, and I'll be out there as well.
great. Okay, with that, meeting is adjourned.